If you've been following this channel, then you know that I have been pleading for the Warriors, Steve Kerr, to play Trayce Jackson Davis because he's easily the best defensive player they have on their team. And that's including guys like Draymond, Wiggins, and GP2, because there is nobody else that can play paint defense, rim protection, playing pick and roll defense, all these things, as well as Trayce Jackson Davis. Nobody, not even Draymond, not this version of himself, not to mention he's not even available. I know for a fact that Trayce would fundamentally change the Warriors defense for the rest of the season and for years to come. He's that good. And that's only on the defensive end of the floor. Wait till you see what he can do on offense. I'm gonna make a lot of videos in the coming days, weeks, and months, and I'm gonna send some messages to Trayce. Hopefully he sees it on some of the things that he could be doing in order to truly maximize his potential in the NBA. But in the meantime, he managed to somehow get into a game, finally, with Draymond out of the equation. Steve Kerr still had him out of the rotation, but against the Blazers, he got an opportunity that he deserved and has not been getting due to an accidental situation where Dario Saric got into foul trouble early in the second quarter, allowing Trayce some playing time. And boy, did he do something with those minutes. I'm going to show you what happened throughout the course of this video, and I'm going to prove to you why Trayce needs to be permanently in the Warriors rotation, no matter who is or isn't available for their team. Let's get down to business. First play is on defense with Klay guarding Brogdon. Wiggins follows Grant cutting to the corner, but sees Brogdon blowing by Klay and decides to provide help. Probably unnecessary since Trayce was in the vicinity. Grant is now open in the corner. Trayce somehow recovers enough to put a hand up, but the three drops for Grant. Here, Klay is being top locked by Simons, so he uses CP's interesting screen. It's a nice way of saying moving screen to get to an open spot. Trayce delivers the pass and it's a catch and shoot knockdown three. Simple, but effective. Pick and roll for Simons and Ayton. Trayce monitors the situation, then falls back to guard Ayton on the roll. Ayton spins to his left in the post before fading away and completely losing Trayce. Bucket. Not a good possession, but let's be patient as the rookie just entered the game when he wasn't expecting to see any playing time. Watch here as Potts empties the corner. Trayce comes down from the right side to set the screen on Brogdon. Ayton is now in front of Chris Paul, who lobs it up to the rolling Trayce for a perfectly executed pick and roll. There's no feeling like an open lob to an elite athlete like Trayce for some of the easiest buckets you can generate simply by running a pick and roll, which the Warriors have a habit of completely abandoning because Steve Kerr doesn't like it. And they don't really even have the proper personnel to run a traditional one like they did here. That's where Trayce completely changes the complexion of how this team's offense can look. Didn't love this defensive possession as Ayton sets a screen on Brogdon, who is a pretty good three-point shooter, but Klay chooses to go under the screen when there was plenty of room to just slide over, allowing an open shot to a pretty good shooter that luckily clanks. Watch this after timeout play where Trayce sets a nice screen for Wiggins, who gets to a spot for the catch and shoot three that splashes. Here Brogdon sets a pin down against Trayce to force a Moody switch on Ayton, but Moody counters with somewhat of a screen himself to prevent Ayton from getting to a spot, which also allows Trayce to get back into position to guard Ayton. And watch as Trayce forces Ayton to use about 4 seconds just to find an acceptable post-up position. Grant finally makes the pass, but Trayce gets in front of the play and gets the steal. Beautiful defense. Trayce seemed a bit confused on this play as both of his guards stayed glued to their positions, so Curry directs him to dish to Moody. Now the play begins as Curry uses Trayce to create separation to receive the pass. Trayce then comes up to set a screen on Simons, forcing Ayton to step up. Curry finds the rolling Trayce, who easily finishes over fellow rookie Kamara for what should have been an and one. I really don't think there are any players who are 6'6" or under who are capable of stopping Trayce in the paint once he gets near the rim, because he plays above the rim. Pick and roll with Simons and Ayton here. Simon uses the screen to penetrate and attack Trayce, who stays in front of him and forces Simons into a very difficult lefty hook that clanks. Nobody helped Curry on the Ayton box out, allowing Ayton to jump over the top of Curry and get the putback dunk. Potts usually helps in this situation, but slept a little bit on the play. Anyway, Trayce continues to play beautiful pick and roll defense against some of the toughest guards in the league, and this kind of an investment almost always pays dividends the further you get into the game psychologically against the opponents, knowing they can't get anything easy in the paint area with Trayce roaming down there. Here Trayce forces a simple switch on the right side with a screen for Kuminga, who quickly shoots over Ayton to knock down the three. Trayce setting good screens is what forces switches like this. So as long as he continues to set effective screens, it's going to open up so many things for the Warriors offense. Another pick and roll for Simons and Ayton. Trayce meets Simons on the switch. Simons decides to try a quick three this time, but Trayce anticipates and contests perfectly to force another clank. Bro, how many centers do you know who can do what Trayce just did against the guard from the three? This young man is a true godsend for Curry and the Warriors, and Steve Kerr has no choice but to play him at this point. High pick and roll for Curry, who fails to get the ball to a rolling Trayce. This would have been a finish at the rim if he just simply got him the ball. But I really think Trayce still needs to make better contact here on Kamara so that Curry has more space to work with on the initial screen. Curry elects to take on Kamara in the ISO, but the rookie does a really good job of staying connected and forcing Curry into taking an awful lefty floater that badly airballs. Looks like the Blazers found a pretty nice defensive wing in their draft. Watch Curry hound Simons and staying connected despite an initial pick and roll attempt. Simons is forced to reset and retry the pick and roll with Ayton, executes and drives to his left, but Trayce follows him the whole way and completely overwhelms Simons, who's forced into a difficult pass out to Grant, who blows by Moody to attack the paint, is met by Trayce at the rim, but does just enough to get it over him for the soft touch. The Warriors can live with this, knowing that nothing easy was surrendered. Blazers use Ayton and Grant to set a screen on Kuminga, forcing Moody to switch to Simons. Ayton drops into the paint and once again fights for position against Trayce, but watch Trayce fighting trying to get in front, forcing Simons to adjust his pass that goes past the arms of Ayton, allowing Curry to steal the ball. That's twice in a row that Trayce has forced the Blazers into a turnover for even attempting to get a pass into Ayton. Talk about shutdown defense. Warriors are now in transition and Curry gets a decent look at a three. Curry just doesn't have much left in the tank after a crazy performance the night before against the Nets when he scored 37 points. So, 35 years old, going on 36, not much legs on a second night of a back-to-back. It is what it is. Simon sees an opportunity to attack in transition, but Moody anticipates perfectly and takes a textbook charge. This is a winning basketball play, and I truly love players who sacrifice their body for the good of the team. The NBA needs to include the charge as a part of the official stat sheet because it's every bit as valuable as the steal. So if it's every bit as valuable as a steal, why would it not be a part of the stat sheet? It is way underrated, and it's about time that the charge is properly rated, because the players are literally sacrificing the good of their health and well-being in order to take these charges and hit the floor. Curry uses a half-court screen by Trayce to shed Kamara, stops the three-point line before dishing off to a rolling Trayce, who sees two and dishing off to a wide-open Moody for the corner three that misses. Notice how the threat of his roll forced Sharp to drop towards him, and he found Moody perfectly rather than forcing his way to the rim. It may seem subtle, but it's actually an unselfish, high IQ play by Trayce. Kuminga gets to the offensive rebound and dishes to CP for the open three, but he barely grazes the rim, and once again the Warriors fail to capitalize on multiple opportunities. That's okay though, because they're not allowing the Blazers to score either. A frustrated Simons looks to attack quickly in transition and tries to flop his way into a foul against Kuminga. Notice how Trayce once again gets back and is right there to help, but the ref doesn't bail him out. Curry picks up the loose ball and throws a sick pass to wide open Moody in transition for the one-handed jam. The momentum is on the Warriors' side, and they've done it through excellent and disciplined defense with Trayce as their anchor. Just as I say that, Kuminga is guarding Grant in the ISO and allows a straight line drive right to the basket, and even Trayce can't do anything to help on this one. This is just too easy, and Kuminga must be better in keeping a body in front of his man. He must use that 225-pound frame to stop a driving player in his tracks so that he can stay in front of the player, rather than angling himself like this, which allows Grant to drive right by him. The worst defense you can play at POA is allowing beeline drives to the rim, and that's what Kuminga just did. Kuminga's best potential as a defender is as a rangy, athletic wing who can play the POA. Currently, there's just too many easy ways to beat him to consider him anything close to a great defender, which is what he needs to be if he wants to be a player who's worthy of being relied upon in the playoffs. Same situation here with Kuminga on an island against Grant, who once again just blows right by to get to the cup, but this time, Trayce is ready for him and meets him perfectly at the rim to force him into a difficult shot attempt, but the ref calls a bogus foul. Trayce can't believe it, as you can see. Let me show you the slow-mo, as you can see for yourself. Curry comes off 2 screens, drives to his left, not sure why he doesn't lob it up to Trayce here. It's almost like he forgot how to throw lobs because he just hasn't had a reliable rotational lob threat for so long. Either way, he stops in the paint, Trayce's roll threat erases Ayton, and the sudden stop by Curry was just enough to shed Grant for a little jump shot in the paint. Here, Grant sets a simple screen that switches Moody and Kuminga, allowing Grant, who's been the only one doing any damage against the Warriors' perimeter defenders, to go to work on Moody. Ayton sets the screen from the right, Grant fools Moody by rejecting the screen, crosses to his left, and attacking straight to the rim. Trayce once again does his best to deter the shot, but Grant gets the super tough left-handed layup. Pick and roll for Sharp and Ayton. Sharp drives to his left against Trayce, but Chris Paul provides fantastic nail help by getting a hand on the ball, and the Warriors get the steal. And this is the beautiful thing about transition basketball. As the Blazers are completely out of sync, Simons can't lose Curry, so he moves off of Kuminga. Ayton is in no man's land. Chris Paul delivers the pass to a wide open Kuminga, who could have dished off to Trayce for the dunk, but pump fakes and gets the layup himself. Here Simons finds Grant, who has it going, but misses the 3. Trayce is there for the rebound. Simple action here as Curry curls off the DHO. Ayton is forced to stay in front of him. Curry sees 2 in front of him and makes a simple pass to a rolling Trayce, who gets the wide open dunk. I've said this in the past, but the Warriors have been praying for times like this, where a rotational big who can defend can also roll to the rim with absolute force. Trayce is easily the biggest steal of this draft, and it's not even close when you consider the fact that he was the 57th overall pick. Yet another pick and roll for Simons and Ayton. Moody navigates and stays connected enough to Simons, who uses Ayton again to try to find an opening. But Moody does a nice job of just being there, forcing Simons to adjust and pump in midair for the awkward shot that misses. And Trayce is there to get a hand on the ball for the defensive rebound. Curry's in transition to make something happen, but Ayton blatantly kicks the ball from behind, and the ball ricochets to the floor as if it's been kicked because it was kicked. Sometimes I wonder what these refs are watching, because the play happened with the ball in Curry's hands with 3 refs watching the action. I don't get it. What were they watching? How do they miss that? Anyway, Warriors have a quick 2-for-1 opportunity here if they hurry in transition, and Moody does just that, attacking Grant, who makes a lame attempt at a flop with minimal contact. The refs don't make the call. Trayce sees the action, dives to the rim to make himself available, and gets the easy dunk, giving the Warriors a 16-point lead going into halftime. All in all, Trayce ended up with a quick 8 points in just 8 minutes of play, shooting 4 of 5 from the field, earning himself a halftime interview with Fitz and Kalena. Well earned, young hero. The Warriors are not one of the worst teams in the league in paint points per game. They are the worst team in paint points per game. They just don't have the personnel to generate easy buckets in the paint. So how refreshing is it that they've shot 59% from the field at the half, despite shooting just 8 of 19 from the 3. That tells you they're generating a high-level offense despite shooting poorly from the 3. Meanwhile, they've held the Blazers to 43% field goal and 6 of 17 shooting from the 3, while outscoring them in the paint by 12 points. This is a big deal, and it's all been made possible with Trayce on the floor. Third quarter kicks off with Simons receiving the pass while coming up from the corner. His screen man did a pretty poor job of providing a screen against Potts, but Simon still loses pods with pure speed, then rises up for an easy looking floater, while Looney completely drops and makes no impact defensively. A stark contrast from how Trayce would have guarded this play. 18 gets an ISO on Loon, tries 2 jab steps before dribbling to his left, gives a shoulder bump, fakes a spin move to the left, then turns back around for a fadeaway jump shot that gets iguodala'd by Loon. All of that movement by 18, all of those moves, and Loon's just standing there and just iguodala's him. So Loon has his value. There are times where he's just very effective defensively, he holds his ground and does his part. Here's the definition of good defense, better offense. More like a lucky shot by Simons, but still. Simons attacks Klay in transition and draws a foul, and notice how Loon is just standing here even though he's in vicinity. Trayce would have been here, and if Kamara, a terrible 3-point shooter, wants to launch it, I'll live with that over watching Simons get easy opportunities in the paint. Also, watch Kuminga come up and goaltend the shot for no good reason, turning it into an and one opportunity for Simons. Young Buck, this is your 3rd year in the league. This is literally the same stuff you were doing in your rookie year. Either time it right or leave it alone. You've got to become more disciplined defensively if you want to stay on the floor longer. You can see Curry clapping too in frustration. To be better. Because championship caliber teams don't have players doing stuff like this. Like deja vu, Simons once again attacks Klay downhill and draws another foul. Notice Loon jogging back on defense, something you'll never see from Trayce. I'm sorry, my volume is going up, Trayce is not on the floor, and a lot of bad stuff is happening on the floor. Here's Klay once again getting cooked by Grant, who drives to his left and gets a very easy layup off the glass with limited resistance from Klay. Once again, you'll notice that Loon simply stands and watches because he feels the need to box out Ayton. Trayce would have contested this and either sent it away or forced a miss, in which case Klay would have to keep Ayton off the boards, which is much better than just giving up a layup in the paint. This is the difference between Trayce and Loon, and it is everything in terms of overall defensive ability. Here Klay plays high pick and roll with Loon, 2 go to Klay with Loon rolling. Klay makes a pretty good pass to Loon, who catches the ball and gets to the rim, and instead of rising over the smaller Sharp for a dunk, he does whatever the hell this is, turning what should have been 2 points for the Warriors into a momentum-breaking transition for the Blazers. Notice also that Loon has fallen to the floor, and now the Warriors are all but screwed. If Klay gets the ball to Trayce on the same play, that's an automatic dunk! Anyway, the Blazers are, in fact, in transition. Kamara is wide open in the corner for the 3. And even if he misses, because the Blazers have numbers, they could get an offensive rebound. So this is a really good shot for the Blazers. And he knocks it down. So what was an 18-point lead has quickly diminished into an 11-point lead. And all momentum has been lost. And now, watch this. Saric is the first big man off the floor. And now you have a dreaded defensive lineup of Chris Paul, Curry, Klay Thompson, Wiggins, and Saric at the 5. Let me remind you, the trio of CP, Curry, Klay is probably one of the worst 3-man combos in the league in terms of defense. Because you have CP, who is tiny at point guard, move the small Curry, who is a point guard, to the shooting guard spot, shifted Klay to the most important POA spot, and now you have a group of defenders with no switchability, overall tiny, no rebounding capability between the 3 in terms of helping against the trees. Then you put your best POA, that's Wiggins, and wasting him at the 4 where he's too small and can't rebound over anybody at the 4 or the 5. This is a completely unacceptable combination of players on defense, but Kerr goes to lineups like this not only throughout the game as you see here, but also to close games where your defense needs to be the strongest, not the weakest. Why? Because he's a charlatan who cares more about offense than defense. And the worst thing about this is that these group of guys have shown no ability to be offensively great when played together in tandem, especially when you have Saric or Looney next to them instead of somebody like Trayce, who is an actual threat rolling to the rim. To top it off, Saric, who is a 0 in terms of paint defense, has been put at the anchoring center spot to somehow protect the rest of the deficiencies across all the positions. This right here is a fireable offense. You must protect players like Chris Paul and Steph Curry at this juncture of their careers, not compromising them by pairing them together and then putting Klay at the POA position when he's not a POA. And then you put your actual POA at power forward, where he's a poor rebounder, he's about 210 pounds maybe, trying to guard and box out guys that are 20, 30, 40 pounds heavier than them. And then once again, to top it off, putting a joke defender at the center spot, the most important defensive position in the game. Let's see what happens. Ayton comes up to screen for Simons. CP overhelps to deter Simons from driving, but that allows Kamara to get into the paint on his drive. CP can't do anything about that against a player who's 7 inches taller than him, and he's forced to foul. Watch as CP controls the ball. Curry goes away from the play while Klay comes off the curl. Dario is rolling, and if Trayce was at this spot, that's a dunk. But Klay doesn't even look and finally passes to Dario when he ran out of options. Dario's shot attempt is contested, forcing him to dish off to no man's land that reaches Curry, and now Curry's forced to take a difficult shot with a hand in his face that bricks. Is this why you have 3 guards on the floor at the same time? So you can run a typical motion offense with 3 guards? When you can actually run that same play without 3 guards being on the floor at the same time? It sounds and looks awfully stupid, doesn't it? The Blazers have gotten multiple stops against the Warriors and are starting to feel more ease on the offensive end. Simons freaking pumps the ball with no call against him, does a slight pump fake, getting an overreaction out of Wiggins, who gets out of position, and Simons goes to his left for a floater that drops in. Notice how Dario just watches it happen when he was clearly in vicinity to help. Trayce would have certainly contested the shot. That's what an anchor is supposed to do. Erase the mistakes of his teammates as the last line of defense. Sarge can do no such thing, which is why he must play at the 4, not at the 5. And now, what was an 18-point lead has dwindled down to single digits. Look at the sickness as the Blazers have gone on a 17-4 run and are right back into this game. This is why the Warriors continue to relinquish the huge leads they once had, because they keep going to lineups that are bad on both ends of the floor, but especially on defense, where they can't stop anybody. If you can't get stops, the game is never over, and NBA teams will always come back against you. I mean, this is so basic, but Steve Kerr, the charlatan without the brilliance of Mike Brown by his side, has no idea that this is how NBA basketball works. Let me remind you, the Warriors made a run with Trayce on the floor in the second quarter, and Steve Kerr has once again completely gone away from what actually works. This is really disgusting if you're rooting for the Warriors and you know what you're watching. Watch here as Klay gets the ball at the top of the arc, burns about 6 seconds on the shot clock, dancing around and doing absolutely nothing against Ayton, then dishes off to Curry, who gets it to CP, who can't make the mid-range, and it's another empty possession. This is disgusting right here. As you can see, you have Grant and Simons on the left side with Klay clearly being the closest man. He needs to pick up Simons because nobody else is there. Instead, he decides he's going to stick to Grant, who's behind on the play, and this forces Saric to have to pick up Simons because Wiggins is already trying to stop Ayton from getting position. Simons easily blows by Saric, finds Kamara, who's open in the corner once again, and Curry can do nothing as a quote-unquote wingman to deter this shot from falling through. I mean, credit Kamara, who shoots 30% from threes on the season, but he's hit 2 corner threes and is really hurting the Warriors. But the lack of attention to detail in transition is absolutely horrid. And it all starts with who is on the floor, which is on Kerr, the idiot, who somehow thinks this looks acceptable. If you're a sane coach, you're calling a timeout right then and there, smack yourself on the head, for making such a ridiculous decision and make a lineup change. Kerr is clearly insane and thinks everything is fine, so he lets them play on. Curry loses Kamara by rejecting the screen and penetrates. Grant foolishly comes off of Clay to help when Simons and Henderson could have been the help on the drive, and Clay ends up with a wide open 3. Warriors will live with this shot all day long, and it's a splash. Okay, great. They finally scored. Now can they get a stop? Let's see. Simons watches a play develop as the Blazers try to get CP switched to Grant on the Henderson screen, but Henderson's position needed to be higher. Clay easily gets around it, and it turns into a simple ISO for Grant against Clay. Grant posts him up, backs him down, uses his left arm to create separation, takes the short range fadeaway, and gets the call. This is a bullshit call, because Clay actually did nothing and Grant is the one who used this off arm to create the separation. Bottom line, another bucket and 1. What's the point of scoring if you're just going to give it right back? That's the problem with these lineups that exposes everybody on defense. Watch Curry here as he uses Sarge on the high pick and roll, except whenever Curry thinks Sarge is rolling, he's almost always popping. It's almost like a habitual thing for Sarge. I think that's been programmed into his mind now, Curry that is, because he wasn't very attentive on what Thibault was doing. Assuming he drew 2 and looked to get the ball out to a popping Sarge, except Sarge rolled and the result is a goofy looking nonsensical turnover that makes the viewer wonder if Curry's lost his marbles. Bottom line, empty possession. Anyway, the lineups have since been updated. Podge has come in for Curry and the Blazers are in transition here with Grant passing up to an open Thibault in the corner. The shot misses, CP does a good job of boxing out his man, but Sarge's man hustles and saves the ball from going out of bounds, giving the Blazers another possession. Henderson gets it to Brogdon, who finds Grant, who knocks down the 3, and what was once an 18-point lead has now dwindled all the way down to a 3-point lead. And it's all because Kerr allowed nonsensical lineups that can't defend, giving the Blazers unprecedented momentum. And if you've been following the Warriors, you know this stuff has been happening all season long. I'm simply explaining to you where it's all going wrong. None of this would be happening if Trayce simply got into the game first before Sarge, or simply just start over Loon. Watch here as Sarge decides to attack his defender straight downhill, gets grabbed. This should have been a foul, but of course the refs don't call it, and Sarge ends up getting blocked and have the ball bounce off of his head. Now the Blazers are off to the races in a 5-on-4 situation once again. Brogdon gets the ball to Grant in the corner and he shoots and misses, but the Blazers get the offensive rebound due to the numbers advantage. Thibault gets it out to Brogdon, and watch Potts here as he initially tries to stop Thibault from passing the ball out, but then just forgets about him as he moves to the open corner. Who do you think was supposed to keep an eye on him? Rook? Instead, Potts plays the Brogdon penetration, watches Sarge getting out to the shooter, and is still sleeping on his man, who remains wide open. I've seen Potts sleep on defense when he's not directly on the ball, and this is an area of his game that must improve. I trust it will because he loves to defend, but somebody's got to point this stuff out. Here, Grant gets the ball from out of bounds, drives to his left on Wiggins, and congratulations to Sarge for actually putting a hand up because he doesn't even do that most of the time. But it's just not good enough. Grant doesn't feel the threat of the help at all and easily converts on this little floater at the rim. I mean, credit to him. He schooled a whole lot of the Warriors defenders. After watching his team completely fumble a comfortable lead, Kerr decides to try Trayce to begin the 4th quarter. And everything proceeded to change in favor of the Warriors.